I stood at the altar wearing my mother's pearls and said yes to the man I loved. I promised forever. I meant every word. But 30 years later, I learned that the man standing beside me that day was someone I should never have married. Not because he was cruel. Not because he stopped loving me. But because of something neither of us knew. Something that would break us into pieces we could never put back together. If you're watching this, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear the rest of this story. And tell me in the comments where you're watching from. We love hearing from you, and your support means everything. My name is Grace, and this is the hardest story I'll ever tell. It started on a summer evening in 1962 at the county fair in Millers Creek, Georgia. I was 20 years old, wearing a yellow dress my mama made, holding a cone of cotton candy that was melting faster than I could eat it. The air smelled like fried dough and cut grass. Music played from the carousel, all those painted horses going round and round, going nowhere. That's where I saw him. Thomas. He stood near the ring toss game, laughing with his friends. Tall and lean, with dark hair that fell over his forehead. When he smiled, his whole face lit up like sunrise. I watched him win a stuffed bear and hand it to a little girl who'd been crying. That's when I knew he was kind. Our eyes met across the crowd. He walked over, still holding his smile. "I'm Thomas," he said. "Thomas Bennett." "Grace," I whispered, suddenly shy. "That's a pretty name," he said. "Fits you perfect." We talked until the fair closed. About everything and nothing. He told me he worked at the lumber mill. That he lived with his mama, Mrs. Helen Carter, who raised him alone after his daddy died. He asked if he could walk me home, and I said yes. That was the first yes. The easy one. When I got home that night, Mama was sitting on the porch in her rocking chair, waiting like she always did. "Who walked you home?" she asked. "A boy named Thomas. Thomas Bennett." The rocking chair stopped moving. Mama's face went pale, like she'd seen a ghost walk across our yard. "Bennett?" she repeated, her voice strange and tight. "What's his mama's name?" "Mrs. Carter. Helen Carter." "Why, Mama?" She didn't answer right away. She just stared out at the dark street, gripping the arms of that chair so hard her knuckles turned white. "You be careful, Grace," she finally said. "Some families carry trouble in their bones." I laughed it off. Mama worried about everything. She saw danger in sunshine. But I should have listened. Thomas and I got married 6 months later in the little white church on Elm Street. It was a small wedding. Just family and a few friends. Mama cried through the whole ceremony, and not the happy kind of crying. Mrs. Carter sat in the front row looking nervous, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief, glancing at Mama like she was afraid of something. I didn't understand it then. I was too busy being happy. We moved into a small house on the edge of town. Thomas worked hard at the mill. I took care of the home, planted flowers in the yard, learned to make his favorite meals. We were poor but we were happy. Every night, he'd come home tired and dusty, and I'd have supper waiting. We'd sit on the porch after eating, watching fireflies dance in the warm air, talking about our dreams. We wanted children. A whole house full of them. But the children never came. Year after year we hoped. We prayed. Nothing happened. Doctors couldn't explain it. They ran tests, asked questions, shook their heads. One doctor suggested we were just unlucky. Another said maybe it wasn't meant to be. Through it all, Thomas held my hand and told me we were enough. Just the two of us. That we didn't need anything else as long as we had each other. I believed him. I loved him so much it hurt. But there was always something. A shadow I couldn't name. A feeling that something wasn't right. Mama's eyes when she looked at Thomas. The way she'd go quiet when he entered a room. The way Mrs. Carter visited less and less. And when she did come by, she seemed frightened. Guilty. Almost. One Sunday after church, I asked Mama directly, "Why don't you like Thomas?" She looked at me with such sadness I almost took the question back. "It's not that I don't like him, baby," she said softly. "He's a good man. I can see that. But sometimes good people get caught up in bad situations that ain't their fault. And sometimes the truth is worse than any lie." "What truth, Mama? What are you talking about?" She shook her head. "I pray you never have to know." That was 1965. 3 years into my marriage. 3 years of whispers and worried looks and questions nobody would answer. Then one afternoon, Mrs. Carter came to visit while Thomas was at work. She sat at my kitchen table, twisting her handkerchief in her hands, not touching the tea I'd poured. "Grace," she said, her voice shaking, "I need to tell you something about Thomas." My heart started beating fast. Is he sick? Is something wrong?
No, honey.
He's healthy. But there's something you should know. Something I should have told you before the wedding, but I was too scared. She took a deep breath. Thomas is adopted. I took him in when he was just a baby. His real mama couldn't keep him. There were complications. The hospital, they handled everything. I never met his birth mother. They said it was better that way. Private. I sat down slowly. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because," she whispered, tears running down her face. "Because I'm starting to think something was wrong. Something bad happened at that hospital. And I think your mama knows what it was." "What hospital?" "Miller County General. 1942. The old wing that burned down in 58. The room felt cold suddenly, even though it was summer. "Why would Mama know anything about that?" Mrs. Carter stood up, still crying. "You need to ask her, Grace. You need to ask her where you were born and when. Ask her about the day you came into this world." She left before I could ask anything else. That evening, I sat Mama down. I told her everything Mrs. Carter said. Mama closed her eyes like she'd been hit. When she opened them again, they were full of tears and something that looked like fear. "Oh, Grace," she whispered. "Oh, my sweet girl. I prayed this day would never come." "What day, Mama? What's happening?" She reached for my hand. Held it tight. "You were born at Miller County General. July 15th, 1942. Same day as Thomas." The words didn't make sense at first. Then slowly, like ice water in my veins, I understood what she was saying.
No, he whispered.
"No, that's not possible." "I don't know for certain," Mama said, crying now. "I've never known for certain. But I've wondered. All these years, I've wondered. When you brought him home and said his name, when I met his mama and saw the fear in her eyes, I knew. I knew we were both carrying the same terrible question." The room spun around me. I couldn't breathe. "You think Thomas is my brother?"
Mama nodded, sobbing.
"I think something happened at that hospital. Something wrong. And I think we're all paying for it." I didn't go home that night. I couldn't face Thomas. I couldn't look at the man I loved and see a brother. I stayed at Mama's house, crying in my old bedroom, staring at the ceiling until the sun came up. When I finally went home the next day, Thomas was sitting at the kitchen table, worried sick. "Grace, where were you?" I was about to call the police. I looked at him. Really looked at him. His eyes. His nose. The way his mouth curved when he was concerned. Did we look alike? Had I been too in love to see it? "We need to talk," I said. I told him everything. Every word Mama and Mrs. Carter had said. I watched his face go from confusion to horror to something that looked like his heart breaking in real time. "No," he said. "No, that can't be true. My mama would have told me. Someone would have known." "Would they?" I asked. If something bad happened, if someone made a mistake or did something wrong, would they tell? Or would they hide it? Thomas stood up, knocking his chair over. He was shaking. "I need to talk to my mama. Right now." We drove to Mrs. Carter's house together, not speaking. The silence in that car felt heavy enough to crush us both. Mrs. Carter opened the door and saw our faces. She knew why we'd come. "Please," Thomas said, his voice breaking. "Please tell me the truth." She let us in. Made us sit. Then she went to her bedroom and came back carrying an old wooden box. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside were papers. Documents. Letters. Things she'd kept hidden for decades. "I got this letter 3 months ago," she said, pulling out an envelope. "It came from a lawyer. A woman named Judith Monroe died and left instructions for this to be sent to me after her death." She handed Thomas the letter. I read it over his shoulder. The words swam before my eyes. Judith Monroe had been a nurse at Miller County General Hospital in 1942. She'd worked in the maternity ward. And in her letter, she confessed to something terrible. There was another nurse. Mary Louise Kendrick. She was married to one of the doctors. Dr. Robert Kendrick. They couldn't have children of their own. It ate at Mary Louise like poison. She became obsessed with the babies in the ward. One night in July 1942, a woman came in giving birth. She was alone, unmarried, scared. She had twin babies. 2 little boys, the letter said. Wait, no. I read it again. A boy and a girl. Twins. 1 boy, 1 girl. According to the letter, Mary Louise Kendrick did something unspeakable. She told the mother that 1 baby died. She falsified records. She took the baby boy home and raised him as her own. The mother left the hospital with only 1 baby. A girl. Me. The baby boy was Thomas. I couldn't breathe. Thomas was reading and rereading the letter, his face white as paper. This says Mary Louise Kendrick died in 1955, Thomas whispered. I never knew anyone by that name. Mrs. Carter was crying. Because she changed her name. After Dr. Kendrick died in a car accident in 1944, she was alone with the baby. She moved away, started over. Changed her name to Helen Carter. She was my sister, Grace. My older sister. The room tilted. Mrs. Carter wasn't Thomas's adoptive mother. She was his aunt. The woman who stole him, who destroyed our family before we were even old enough to know we had one, was her sister. When she got sick in 1943, she asked me to take the baby, Mrs. Carter continued. Told me he was adopted through proper channels. I believed her. I loved that little boy like he was my own. I didn't know the truth until I found her diary after she died. By then, Thomas was 13 years old. What was I supposed to do? Destroy his whole world? Tell him his mother was a thief and a liar? Thomas stood up. I need air. He walked out. I heard our truck start. He drove away. I stayed with Mrs. Carter, looking through the box. There were more papers. Birth certificates. One for me, Grace Ellen Morrison, born July 15, 1942. Mother, Sarah Morrison. Father, unknown. And a hospital bracelet. Small, old, faded blue. It said Baby B, male. Thomas. There was one more document. A notebook page, torn and water-stained. It was in Mary Louise Kendrick's handwriting. It said, twins born 11:47 p.m. and 11:51 p.m. Mother, Sarah Morrison. Father, not listed. Girl given to mother. Boy taken home. God forgive me. They'll never know. Better this way. The girl will have a life. The boy will have a good home. No one gets hurt. Except everyone got hurt. Everyone. Thomas didn't come home for 3 days. When he finally returned, he looked like a ghost. He'd been driving, thinking, trying to make sense of something that made no sense. We can't be married anymore, he said. You know that, right? We don't know for sure, I said desperately. The letter says we're twins, but what if it's wrong? What if there's been another mistake? Grace, he said gently, touching my face. Look at us. Really look. We have the same eyes. The same chin. Your mama saw it. My mama saw it. We were too in love to see it ourselves. I was crying so hard I couldn't speak. I love you, Thomas said. I'll love you until the day I die. But I can't stay. I can't look at you every day and know what we've done. What we've been to each other. It's wrong, Grace. No matter how much we love each other, it's wrong. Where will you go? Away. Somewhere far. I'll send you money. I'll make sure you're taken care of. But I can't be here. He packed a bag that night. Kissed my forehead. Told me he was sorry for everything. Then he left. That was 1968. 6 years of marriage ended in one terrible revelation. I stayed in our little house. Kept his things. Waited, even though I knew he wasn't coming back. People in town whispered. Wondered why Thomas Bennett left his pretty young wife. I never told anyone the truth. How could I? Some truths are too ugly to speak out loud. Mama came by every day. Mrs. Carter moved away. Couldn't bear the shame. I worked at the general store, went to church, lived a half-life. Years passed. 5, 10, 20. I heard about Thomas sometimes. He'd moved to Tennessee. Worked construction. Never remarried. Never had children. Neither did I. How could I? After loving him, how could anyone else ever matter? Then in 1987, something happened that changed everything again. Two men in suits came to my door. They were from the state attorney's office. They asked if I was Grace Morrison Bennett. I said yes, though I hadn't used Bennett in years. "Ma'am," one of them said, "we've been investigating irregularities at Miller County General Hospital. We found records. Birth records from 1942. Your name came up. So did Thomas Bennett's. We need to ask you some questions." I let them in. Told them everything. Showed them the box Mrs. Carter had given me before she left town. They took notes. Asked more questions. Then they told me something that made my heart stop. "Mrs. Bennett," the younger one said carefully, "we've run tests. Scientific tests. On the records and evidence we found. There's something called heteroparental superfecundation. It's rare, but it happens. It means twins can have the same mother but different fathers." I stared at him. "What? You and Thomas Bennett are twins," he said. "Same mother. But different fathers. You're half-siblings, not full siblings. It changes things. Legally. Morally. Medically." The room went dark around the edges. I gripped the table to keep from falling. "What does that mean?" He looked uncomfortable. "It means what you and Thomas did, being married. It wasn't what everyone thought. You share a mother but not a father. Some people might say that makes a difference. That maybe you could have stayed together. Could have." Those two words burned like fire. All those years apart. All that pain. All that grief. And maybe, just maybe, we could have been together after all. If you're still with me, thank you for listening to this painful part of my story. Please like this video and subscribe because the final part will show you what I did with this truth. And comment below where you're watching from. Your support helps me share this story with others who might need to hear it. The men left me their card and said they'd be in touch. I sat in that empty house for hours, not moving, barely breathing. Then I did something I hadn't done in 19 years. I called the number Thomas had given me for emergencies. A phone number in Tennessee I'd never used because I was too afraid of hearing his voice. He answered on the third ring. "Hello." His voice. After all those years, still the same voice that made my heart skip. "Thomas," I whispered. "It's Grace." Silence. Long and heavy. Then, "Grace. Are you okay? Is something wrong? I need to see you. Something happened. Something important. Can you come home?" Another pause. "I don't know if that's a good idea." "Please," I said. "Just once more. I need to tell you something. After that, if you want to leave again, I'll understand. But please. Please come home." 2 days later, his truck pulled up in front of the house. I watched from the window as he got out. He was older now. Gray in his hair. Lines on his face. But still Thomas. Still the man I loved. He knocked on the door like a stranger. I opened it. We stood there, looking at each other, and all those years disappeared. I wanted to throw my arms around him. Tell him I'd missed him every single day. That my life had been empty without him. But I didn't. Instead I said, "Come in. I need to show you something." I gave him the papers from the state attorney's office. Watched him read. Saw his hands start shaking. "What does this mean?" he asked. "Heteroparental super." "I don't understand." I explained it the way the investigators explained it to me. Simple words. Clear meaning. We were twins. Same mother. Different fathers. Half-siblings, not full. Some people say that makes a difference, I finished. That maybe we weren't as related as we thought. That maybe. I couldn't finish. The hope was too painful. Thomas set the papers down. Looked at me with eyes full of tears. "Grace," he said softly. "Even if we only share half our blood, we still share it. The law might see a difference, but I don't know if I can. We grew in the same womb. We were born minutes apart. That makes us family in a way that matters." "But we didn't know," I said desperately. "We fell in love not knowing. Doesn't that count for something?" "It counts for everything," he said. "But it doesn't change what we are." Maybe some people could live with it. Maybe some people could say half-siblings is different enough. But Grace, I can't. I've spent 19 years trying to forgive myself. Trying to believe that what we had wasn't wrong because we didn't know. Adding, but actually you're only half-related, doesn't make it feel any better. I started crying. Hard, broken sobs that came from somewhere deep. Thomas pulled me close. Held me while I cried. It was the first time he'd touched me in nearly 20 years. I still love you, he whispered into my hair. I never stopped. But love isn't always enough. Sometimes the right thing is to let go. He stayed for 3 days. We talked about everything. The life we'd had. The life we'd lost. The life we'd never have. We looked through old photos. Laughed at memories. Cried over dreams that died. On the 3rd day, he said he had to go back to Tennessee. He had a job. A life. It wasn't much, but it was his. Before he left, he held my hands. What are you going to do? He asked. With all this information. The truth about what that nurse did. I'd been thinking about that. Thinking hard. I'm going to write it down, I said. All of it. Every detail. I'm going to put it in a box and leave it for whoever comes after us. Our nieces. Nephews. Grandchildren we'll never have. Someone should know what happened. Someone should know the truth. Why? Thomas asked. Why not let it die with us? Because, I said, lies are what caused all this pain. Mary Louise Kendrick lied. The hospital lied. Everyone kept secrets and people got hurt. If I keep this secret too, I'm just continuing the lie. The truth might be painful, but at least it's honest. At least it's real. Thomas nodded slowly. You were always braver than me. Not brave, I said. Just tired of carrying this alone. He kissed my forehead one last time. Goodbye, Grace. Goodbye, Thomas. I watched him drive away. Again. But this time felt different. This time felt like closing a door instead of having it slammed in my face. Over the next few months, I did what I promised. I wrote everything down. Every memory. Every document. Every piece of the puzzle. I found more information through the state investigators. They discovered that Mary Louise Kendrick had worked with Dr. Robert Kendrick to falsify birth records at least 12 times. We weren't the only ones. There were other stolen babies. Other destroyed families. They asked if I wanted to press charges against the hospital, against the estate of Mary Louise Kendrick. I said no. What good would it do? The people responsible were dead. Punishing ghosts wouldn't bring back the years Thomas and I lost. But I did agree to help them find the other families. The other victims. If there was a chance to give someone else answers, I wanted to help. That's when they told me something else. Something that made my heart stop all over again. My mother, Sarah Morrison, hadn't just had twins. The medical records showed evidence of a 3rd baby. Triplets. But only 2 babies were recorded in any official documents. Me and Thomas. Somewhere out there, I had another sibling. Someone who'd been taken or lost or hidden. Someone who might not even know they were part of this story. I added that to my box. All the questions. All the maybes. All the truths and half-truths and mysteries that might never be solved. Then I sealed it. Wrote a letter to put on top. Addressed it, to whoever finds this. To whoever needs to know. To the future. In the letter, I wrote, my name is Grace Morrison Bennett. This is the story of how a lie stole my life. How love became something twisted and wrong through no fault of our own. How the truth came too late to save what mattered most. I wrote, if you are reading this, you might be related to me. You might be the 3rd baby, the missing piece of this broken puzzle. Or you might be my niece or nephew, grandchild or great-grandchild, wondering about the strange sad woman in your family history who lived alone and never smiled much. I wrote, I want you to know that love is real, even when everything else is lies. Thomas and I loved each other truly. That love was pure and good and honest. What happened to it wasn't our fault. We were victims of someone else's crime, someone else's selfish choices. I wrote, don't let anyone tell you that truth doesn't matter. It matters more than comfort. More than keeping peace. More than protecting feelings. The truth is what sets you free, even when freedom hurts. I wrote, I forgive Mary Louise Kendrick. Not because what she did was okay, but because carrying hate is too heavy, and I'm too tired. I forgive her and I hope God has mercy on her soul. But I will never forget. This box is proof that I will never forget. I wrote, and to Thomas, wherever you are, whatever happens next, I loved you. I love you still. In this life or the next, you are the other half of my heart. Maybe in heaven, there are no rules about who you're allowed to love. Maybe in heaven, we can be what we were always meant to be. Together. I finished the letter on a Tuesday. Put it in the box with all the documents, all the evidence, all the pain transformed into paper and ink. Then I took that box to the library. Asked them to keep it in their archive. Told them it was local history. Important. True. The librarian, a young woman named Claire, looked at me with kind eyes. Will anyone come looking for it? Maybe, I said. Someday. Or maybe not. But it'll be here. The truth will be here. That's what matters. I'm 70 years old now. Thomas died last year. Heart attack. Quick and painless, they said. I went to his funeral. Stood in the back. Watched them lower him into the ground. Didn't tell anyone who I was. But I brought flowers. Yellow roses. His favorite. I live alone in our little house. The one we bought when we were young and stupid and in love. I kept it exactly as it was. His chair. His coffee mug. His jacket still hanging by the door. People in town think I'm crazy. The sad old woman who lives in the past. Maybe they're right. But I know something they don't know. I know that love is stronger than blood, stronger than law, stronger than time. I know that sometimes the world breaks you for things that aren't your fault. And I know that the truth, no matter how painful, is always better than a lie. That's my story. That's what happened when I said yes at the altar and discovered, too late, that the man I married was the brother I never knew I had. Half-brother. Twin. Soulmate. All of it true. All of it complicated. All of it real. If you're watching this, thank you for hearing me. Thank you for letting me tell this story that's lived inside me for so long. Please share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Someone who's carrying secrets. Someone who thinks the truth is too hard to speak. The truth is always worth speaking. Always. And Thomas, if somehow you can hear me, I said yes at that altar. I meant it then. I mean it now. I'll mean it forever. Yes to you. Yes to us. Yes to the love that survived everything, even when we couldn't. Yes.